What's going on, my people? This is the MMA and Boxing Addicts channel, and today we're going to be going over Johnny Mi Vida Loca Tapia. You guys, born in 1967, the Albuquerque, New Mexico native. If you guys don't know who this is and you're a boxing fan, I'm telling you right now, you need to stop what you're doing. Go watch this documentary. Johnny Tapia, one of the hardest lives that a champion has ever had in the sport of boxing. I'm talking about, being from the bottom. He grew up with his mom. His dad was killed and murdered before he was even born, my friends. Then at 8 years old, my man Johnny Tapia, he says it from himself. He didn't want his mom to go out that night. She goes to the club, Virginia Tapia, at 33 years old, my friends. And while Johnny Tapia was only 8, she gets murdered. But not only does she get murdered, she gets stabbed 22 times with a screwdriver, my friends. Brutally beaten and raped, and just absolutely horrible. Throughout Johnny Tapia's life, he's growing up as a young kid. He has to constantly think about this, when he finds out. And it's crazy because when they found out about Johnny Tapia's mom, it was 3 days later. It turns out she was in a hospital and she died on the 4th day. Whoever killed her got away with it. And we're going to talk about more of that in a little bit. He got away with it for the moment and just left her to die.
I want him so bad, that guy. I still think about him. How he did the rest of my life with no problem in prison, just knowing that I got him. Nobody ever touches my mama. I don't care who you are, what you are, how you are. Nobody puts their hands on my mama. That's the love of my life. It's my queen. The saddest part of my life is outliving my mother. I tried to kill myself so many times. Just seemed to come back. But I struggle with that every day. I want my mom. I want my mom. Can't have her today.
And Johnny Tapia had to grow up with that, man. When he turned 8 years old, when his mom died, he had to go live with his grandma and his grandpa. Now, this was like a broken down, super, super bad neighborhood. And they were living on welfare. And the grandfather was a super strict grandfather. He had to take care of the family, this and that. But where they were located was an area where Johnny Tapia ended up joining a gang called the Wells Park Logo Gang, which was a hot gang back in the 80s and back in the 90s, my friends. And yeah, man, Johnny Tapia was living that life, but at 11 years old, he joins boxing. Had an outstanding amateur career, man. Actually had success. I believe he was a 5-time national Golden Glove champion, a 3-time national champion. I believe he was rated highly as #1 in the world at one time, my friends. This guy, he had all the promise in the world, right? It was growing up bad, but still. He becomes 22-0, my friends. 22-0. And all of a sudden, he decides to do cocaine. I don't know what happened, but he gets himself a hold of some cocaine and decides to start sniffing some lines, man. And this was back in the days, you guys, back in the 90s, back in the 80s, when the cocaine wasn't as pressed on as it is now. You feel me? So it was a lot harder to get twacked out and addicted to this stuff, man, especially because you didn't know. We all know what happens to people who do cocaine all the time. But in those days, it was the hot times, my friends. And yeah, man, in 1990, Johnny Tapia, 22-0, he failed about 2 to 3 drug tests for cocaine and ended up getting suspended for 3.5 years. But that's not it. He also got in trouble and got charged for threatening a witness that was involved in his murder case. Supposedly his cousin was involved in a murder case, and the witnesses were doing what witnesses do, and Johnny Tapia threatened to kill them. because he wasn't the guy that he was, he holds it down. He's a Wells Park logo gang member. And if you guys know who Johnny Tapia is, watch the documentary, you guys. This guy was a hardcore guy, man. So he gets suspended for 3.5 years, but it's like a curse and a blessing at the same time, because he starts getting even more addicted to cocaine, right? He loses all his money. He loses his house. He becomes homeless, right? This is all going down 1991. He doesn't know what to do to get money. So what does he do? He starts making his way to this bar right here, exactly, my friends. And he starts fighting in this freezer right here, exactly, for $300 a pop and a 6-pack of beers. I'm not even playing around, bro. He literally lost everything, was at the bottom again. Doing cocaine, being addicted. Finally, he met the love of his life. His wife, my friends, Teresa Tapia. Now, let me tell you guys, man, shout out to this woman, because in this time, he lied to her. He kept it a secret that he wasn't doing cocaine. Even when he married her, it was always a secret. And until one day somebody told his wife, hey, if you want to know the real Johnny Tapia, you need to go to the restroom and you'll find out who he is. And she figured it out, man. And he talks about how he got caught and how she was absolutely devastated, like heartbroken, man. But that same night, Tapia overdosed. And I believe that was his second overdose. And this was a man who was trying to commit suicide throughout his life due to the thoughts of his mom dying and what happened to his mom and all the anger in him, thinking about the guy that they never even caught. 1 year after the investigations, they dropped the charge, my friends. Absolutely horrible. So what does the wife do? She changed Tapia up inside the house so he could literally go drug free. I'm not even playing around. He literally talks about how he was screaming, pounding on the walls, breaking the walls, telling her, let me out of here. He was having withdrawal effects, like just tripping. But she said she literally barricaded the windows, locked all the doors, made it impossible for Tapia to get out. Why? Because she loved him, man. It got to a point where he was even telling her, I'm going to break every single thing inside this house if you don't let me out. You know what she told him? You could go ahead and break everything in there, Johnny, but you're still going to stay inside. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, man, my girl and a lot of women would have just left, bro. Once all that was going on, once you're at the top and then you're going down here, you lose everything, a lot of women would have left. But she stuck by his side and actually helped him, bro. And he talks about how on the 4th week, he actually got better, started doing push-ups, started doing sit-ups, started running in place inside his room. On the 5th week, Pablo Chavez comes, his trainer, comes. He had a lot of trainers, but that was one of his main trainers as he was growing up in professionals. Guys, comes and picks him up and gets Johnny Tapia back on the road. Man, this was 1994. Already 3.5 years had gone. He hadn't boxed. Boxing gives him another chance. And not only that, my friends, he comes in the same year, has a couple of wins, and fights Henry Martinez for the world championship fight, dude. And in a absolutely amazing comeback from him being at the bottom, working himself up to a championship fight, and he gets it done. He knocks out Henry Martinez in the 11th round. Throughout this video, I'm going to be playing clips for you guys, so you guys could be seeing the excitement and words for himself, you guys. Check this out.
Just barely beats the count. It is over. They had to do that. Johnny Tapia has made it all the way back.
Albuquerque and Story TV, man. And I never forgot it, man.
And new super flyweight captain of the world.
I mean, that was an absolutely amazing win for Johnny Tapia, man. It makes me happy seeing the excitement that this guy had and the love that he had for this sport. But at the same time, during this time, he was still addicted to doing cocaine. Check it out. After that fight, his wife becomes his manager. And from 1994 to 97, this guy is literally fighting 6 times a year. to a point where I believe in 1996, I mean, he was literally fighting 7 times a year. 1997, here he comes for the world championship fight again, his second. No, I believe it's his 3rd world title, my friends. And he's going up against Danny Romero. This guy's from Albuquerque, New Mexico, too. The same spot where he is from. There's gang violence getting involved. This becomes something huge because, you know, he was the good guy and Johnny Tapia was the bad guy in this fight. And what Johnny Tapia had gone through while he was 3.5 years suspended, you had Danny Romero coming up and being the star and stealing all the shine and everything. And as Johnny Tapia came back, he started stealing the shine again. And there's even videos out there, Danny Romero saying that this mat's been on him for a long time and he's really been wanting to take it out. And here it comes, 1997, you guys, we finally get the matchup. It's so crazy to the point where in Las Vegas, they have to get 100 police and 3 gang units to literally be at the fight and just be able to spectate and make sure that nothing goes down because gangs were getting involved when it came to this fight, my friends. And what happens? An absolute war of a war. Johnny Tapia gets the victory. I mean, another absolutely great victory, my friends. Look at him celebrate this.
115, 113 to the IBF and WBO Junior Bantamweight Champion of the World, Johnny Tapia.
Albuquerque already knew who was their champion. I was their champion before and I was their champion after.
Absolutely amazing from Johnny Tapia, man. 1997, he wins that title, but at the same time, keeping your head, man, that he's still messing around with drugs, but he's still keeping it good. In 1998, he comes, right? He gets another world championship fight against Yana. He wins the WBA Bantamweight Championship fight of the world. And it's just on top of the world right now, man. He's happy. Things are going good. But in 1999, before he fights Raleigh Ayala, before he fights him, man, and he takes his first loss ever in his career, that whole year before that, the investigators who were investigating his mother's death finally get back into it 23 years later. And you guys, they finally find who killed his mom. In 3 weeks, a couple weeks before the fight with Ayala, he finds out the guy who killed his mom. It turns out, I'm not even going to say the guy's name because he doesn't even deserve it, but it turns out 8 years after he had killed Johnny Tapia's mom, he actually got hit by a hit and run car crash himself. He got ran over, I believe, 3 times. Think, 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 think. And he died. And when Johnny Tapia felt this, look, I'm going to show you this clip and you guys can see it for yourself how mixed up of emotions he was with this man.
Next day he can be crying. Next day he'll be very angry.
There was a closure in my heart, in my soul, that they finally found out, but kind of pissed off it took so long, so many years, when they had the right guy right there and then. I wanted him first. I was gonna hurt him. But he died. You know, a car ran over him 3 times, but maybe it was for the best. I'd have stabbed the shit out of him like nobody's business. I want him so bad, that guy. I still think about him. I already did the rest of my life with no problem in prison, just knowing that I got him. Nobody ever touches my mama. I don't care who you are, what you are, how you are. Nobody puts their hands on my mama. That's the love of my life. It's my queen. The saddest part of my life is outliving my mother. I tried to kill myself so many times. Just seemed to come back. But I struggle with that every day. I want my mom. I want my mom. Can't have her today.
So you got to understand As he's going into that Ayala match, he has a bunch of mixed feelings. You know, everything's going so hard. He didn't know how to feel it. He was still doing drugs at the time. And honestly, man, cocaine's not the best for you, especially if you're an emotional person, especially if bad things are happening to you. It's only going to make it worse, man. It's only going to make it worse, man. But I don't judge him, bro, because I've been there. I've been down that road. And I'm not on that road no more, man. That's why I love Johnny Tapia. That's why he's one of my favorite fighters to ever live. Because he came from nothing, man, and he made it happen. But you guys, he loses in 1999 to Ayala and just is heartbroken, but he's still able to stay on the road. He's still able to stay good. He gets the rematch. He gets a couple wins, 2 wins, and he comes back and gets the rematch in 2000 against Ayala in a fight that a lot of people thought was a robbery. And you guys, he loses. He loses again, and this time it's bad. You know, after that, Johnny Tapia was still able to get a couple wins, but at the same time, he's still messing around with coke. Then, when it gets into 2002, he's able to win his 5th world title, my friends, but ends up facing Marco Antonio Barrera in the biggest fight of his career, where I believe his payout was about $2 million, which was the highest that Johnny Tapia had ever got paid, my friends. But in that fight versus Marco Antonio Barrera, he loses. And I think this loss was one of the hardest losses that he's ever dealt with, because 3 weeks after he fought against Marco Antonio Barrera, he overdosed. He overdosed on cocaine once again, my friends. And once again, Johnny Tapia, just everything is just coming down on him again. You know, everything, all the loss that he's taking now, the trauma with his family, the trauma with his mom, and everything that was going on in the investigation and all the losses. And Johnny Tapia, man, during this time from 2002 all the way to 2007, he's still fighting. He's still getting victories every now and then, but at the same time, he's still dealing with his cocaine addiction. But to make things worse, in 2007, he overdoses on cocaine again. His wife comes home, finds him asleep and basically dead. He slips into a coma. But throughout his career, when Johnny Tapia was winning fights, you know, he got married to his wife. He actually became best friends with his wife's brother, his brother-in-law. And man, when Johnny Tapia slipped into that coma, and because of doing cocaine, the brother-in-law and his son, Johnny Tapia's nephew, were on the way to go visit Johnny Tapia at the hospital. And they didn't make it, my friends. On the way to go visit Johnny Tapia in his coma because of cocaine, the nephew, the little boy, and his best friend died. His brother-in-law. And to make things even worse, his brother-in-law had married his niece. And it was just like when he woke up, he said that he felt the world coming on him. I have a clip to show you guys right here where he talks about it, man. And it's devastating, bro. It's absolutely devastating.
Tragic in an unexpected way.
A day and a half after Tapia entered Presbyterian, the family got even more bad news. A car crash on Highway 550. Tapia's nephew and brother-in-law were killed. Family members tell us the two were headed to Albuquerque to see Johnny in the hospital.
I mean, everybody in the boxing world used to call them the married couple because they'd argue, and every video you see Johnny, you see my brother.
That's Johnny's brother-in-law, Robert Gutierrez, who died in the crash on 550, celebrating a victory in the boxing ring back in 1997.
That was my best friend. That was my partner. That was what we say in our language, my road dog, but I felt that I killed him because I was in the coma. If I could take that all back, I would. I would. It gets, sometimes it gets rough. I miss him. He was my partner. And like I kind of messed it up because I fell in love with his sister, so we would never fight. We'd argue, but we would never fight. And what'll happen, he ended up marrying my niece.
When the police arrived to the house to find him in the coma, my friends, it turned out that Johnny Tapia actually had cocaine on him too. So because of this, he ended up being locked up in and out of jail for the next 3 years of his life, my friends, from 2007 all the way to 2010. But finally being able to regain himself, finally being able to redemption himself one last time, you guys. And he returns to the ring in 2010. But again, never fighting for a world title. And in 2011, he has his last fight of his career right there in Albuquerque, New Mexico, man. And in just an absolute beautiful moment for him. Absolutely beautiful moment for the way his career should have went out. And when he retires, you know, keep in mind he passes away in 2012, my friends. So in 2010, in 2011, when he retires, he actually opens up his own gym. It's a good thing, man. He finally has time to spend with his family, you know, his kids, his wife, and he decides to open up his own gym and try to help out the young people just like him, dude. You know, there's even some cool clips of him with one of his trainers and him being so excited for you, man. And check this out, man. Check these clips out of him and one of his fighters when he had became a coach, and still the type of excitement that Johnny Tapia was in love with boxing, my friends.
Hey, can you rap that? We don't care who sees, so what we go
Absolutely amazing. It gives me goosebumps just seeing Johnny Tapia like that, you guys. And in 2012, May 27th, Johnny Tapia finally passed away, my friends. And it wasn't because of cocaine, as a lot of people were suspecting. It was due to heart failure. Now, I know all the drugs probably had something to do with it. But when it comes to heart failure, I'm going to blame it on the way his life went, man. You know? His mom dying at 8 years old, him losing his best friend, him not growing up with his dad, him losing his nephew, him having all the overdoses, all the cocaine, falling to the ground, getting himself back up, falling down to the ground, getting himself back up every single time, my friends. And at the end of it, Johnny Tapia was a warrior. He was an absolute man, one of the most hardest men that ever stepped into the ring, and one of the most memorable men that ever stepped into the boxing ring, you guys. Today I made this video because Mother's Day was this last weekend, and my mom was telling me about how big of a fan she is with Johnny Tapia. And I just thought, you know what? This is the month of when Johnny Tapia passed away. And why don't I do a little tribute for one of the greatest Mexican Americans, Johnny Tapia, to ever fight in the ring, my friends. Hey, Albuquerque, New Mexico's Mi Vida Loca, Johnny Tapia, my friends. Absolutely amazing. We love you from the day that you died until now, my friends. We're always going to remember you. Subscribe to the channel, my guys. If you love Johnny Tapia, like and subscribe. And if not, it's all right, my baby. Hey, I'm out.
The end shadows every beginning.
You know, I think if my mom was alive, I probably wouldn't have never fought. Probably a spoiled little kid, or who knows? Never got to see it. You know? But she's taking care of me this far. Boxing has saved my life. Boxing has really saved my life. Made a career out of it, and it has its highs and it has its lows. And I've been as low as you can go, and I've been as high as you can get. I've always said a saying, yesterday's gone, tomorrow never comes. Today I'm okay.